I thought we could kind of get started and introduce things. And again, as people continue to join, or if you ever want to come back to this presentation, you'll be receiving an email after with the recording if you ever want to look back at it and learn something new, ask another question, whatever it may be. We'll be sharing that with everybody. And we thank you so much for taking this time during your day, as we know your time is valuable and we hope to provide value in this time. And first of all, I just wanted to say happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day. This is a very exciting day where we can, in the name, bring more awareness to the world on the importance of accessibility for people with disabilities. And here at Clusiv, we really feel for that, want to see more accessibility and inclusion for the blind community. So today, we're going to be talking about how people who are blind or visually impaired can learn to make an impact in accessibility. To first provide a quick introduction, my name is Blake, and I work in marketing and do a lot with accessibility as well for Clusiv. And I can share a little bit more about my intro a bit later, but I am also joined here by Becky, who will be monitoring the chat for any questions that you have that come up that we can address throughout the presentation. But also, we're going to make a chunk of time at the end to go through a Q&A to get a bit more conversational with all that was discussed. So Becky, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself real quick?
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. Good morning, everyone. My name is Becky Verke, and I am fortunate enough to work with Blake on the Clusiv side. I am an account executive, so I help kind of the vocational rehabilitation side of things and help students get signed up for the trainings that we offer. Happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and I'm really happy to be here with you all. Like Blake said, I will be monitoring the chat, or if you have a question you want to ask directly and chat one of us, that's totally fine too. But looking forward to spending an hour with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Becky. Cool. So first of all, I just want to share a bit about who this webinar is for. So if you are someone who is blind or visually impaired that is looking to learn more about accessibility, about making an impact in the field, are curious about what working in the field is like, or just on how you personally can, get involved, grow your skills in helping make a more inclusive world. So a bit about the plan today. We're going to be going through explaining just different accessibility concepts on why accessibility is important, what even is accessibility, how to use your lived experience as someone who is blind or vision impaired as your biggest asset when making an impact in this field. We're going to make sure we provide you time for a question and answer. And also, we want to share how, at the end, how Clusiv can help take your learning to the next level and help you reach your career goals or just upskilling in a variety of these areas. Also, just to introduce myself, as I'll be the main speaker for today, a bit about why listen to me. So my story really quickly that I'm sure many of you can relate to many parts of, and I'll unpack more parts throughout. But I grew up with perfect vision, and at the age of 16, a condition called LHON caused me to go through severe central vision loss. And with that, as I know many of you can relate to, I faced many challenges in high school and then in college and in employment, and navigating all these new challenges, figuring out new types of assistive technology, and realizing that there is a lot of problems and barriers that exist. And I found the technology was my biggest frustration and a big enemy of mine, but also my best friend. And the more it was my best friend was when things were made accessibly. And my background is in marketing, but I have pivoted my career path to work in accessibility. And I have done quite a variety of roles for organizations, large and small, doing web and software and mobile accessibility testing, I've helped train companies on how they can implement web accessibility. I have done a variety of projects to help companies create more inclusive and accessible products and experiences. And I just have a big personal passion for this. And currently in my role with Clusiv, I do work in marketing, and I see a lot of how accessibility connects with marketing. And I'll share that accessibility is not just a web issue, but many people can be involved in improving this. And I also just love this area. I see that there is a big problem and a need, and that it's a growing field that affects all of our lives. And really, it's an exciting thing to see progress in. So that's just a little bit about me at a high level, so that as I share about all these things, you know where I'm coming from on my background with these things. So hopefully that helps give some helpful context as we go through this presentation and you understand a bit more of the plan that we have. So first, I want to address the problem. Why are we even here talking about accessibility? What's the big deal? And so the big thing of accessibility is that technology isn't always accessible, which basically means it doesn't always work for all users. It doesn't always work for people with disabilities, and for many of us who are blind or visually impaired, we use technology that was not designed with us in mind. Workplaces and education is not always inclusive. The technologies that are used there aren't the most accessible with the technology we use. Even if it is, it's really complicated and hard to learn. So this creates barriers to employment. And we know, a lot of us know about the unemployment rate in the blind community that is around 70%. And a lot of this is due to tangible barriers of accessibility and even inclusion in the workplace. Also, in accessibility, there are more and more people getting involved in this. There are, more and more web developers and software engineers that are starting to understand how do you design and create something that's accessible. But there's not always the most representation with people who are blind that have the lived experience to make these changes. And when designing for people who are blind, you want to make sure that those people are there so that we can help communicate how to make those improvements and what really works best for us. And so that's why I wanted to create this presentation, so that we could create more of a discussion around, okay, accessibility is a problem. There's a lot of people that are trying to improve accessibility, but we need to have more representation and voices and the people that can have the most value and insight that have the lived experience. So that's a bit about the problem here. And also, I did want to make note, I am going through some presentation slides here. They're mostly just for my reference, or if you want something to visually follow along to. Anything that's on the slides, I'll be talking through. I just wanted to make note of. And if you want to go back in the recording, if you are able to magnify or anything, then you can check out the slides as well. So now, with all that problem said, don't want to be too much a downer here. We want to talk about the solution. We want to make sure we understand the problem so that we know what the solution is. So, as I mentioned, that there needs to be more representation. The blind community needs to be champions of accessibility. We need to be the ones leading the charge and showing this is what we need, this is why we need it, and coming together with the people that are designing and creating this technology. And especially at Clusiv, we believe that the more and more people who are blind that can become employed, the more that we're able to make these changes. Because it's not just about making a website more accessible, it's about creating greater access in all areas of employment, the workforce, and society in general. We want to make sure people can use their lived experience to create more improvements in accessibility, because I believe that accessibility creates more opportunity. Through making things accessible, it's creating more equal and fair opportunities. Because I always like to say, I do the same things other people do, the same tasks at work, the same assignments in school, but I would just do it a different way. Accessibility may allow people to do things a different way with their assistive technology, but it creates that equal opportunity, which is an amazing part of this solution here. Lastly, the part of the solution is we need to learn together. We need to support one another and figure it out because technology grows quickly and we need to collaborate to find things out. And that's why I think more people in the blind community here, we need to understand how do we use our lived experience, communicate things, advocate, and be a part of this and create a more accessible world with more opportunity. Awesome. So what even is accessibility? To some of us, it may sound like a buzzword that we hear too much. Other of us, we may not be as familiar with it, and it may seem like some confusing technical word. At a very, very high level, I think accessibility is helping make things work and have better access for everybody. And this really focuses on people with disabilities. And I first want to separate physical accessibility versus digital accessibility. We all can commonly see what physical accessibility looks like, whether that is a ramp with a handrail or elevators or even different accessible parking spaces and accessible hotel rooms or the accessible bathroom stall. Whatever that may look like, we can become more and more familiar with those things, especially since the Americans with Disabilities Act in the early 1990s. And what this conversation is really going to focus on is digital accessibility. A lot of people may first think, oh, that means web accessibility and making websites more accessible. Well, when it comes to digital accessibility, there's a lot more than just the internet a lot more than just the web that connects to the internet or is digital. These days, digital accessibility will refer to websites and software and mobile apps and documents and anything that can connect to the internet, which is many different devices. And as we unpack digital accessibility, I want to make sure that anyone out there can learn the insights of digital accessibility, which I'm just going to refer to now as accessibility, so that you can have some technical insights into the field. You can learn, is this a career path you would want to explore? Or whatever role, place in your life that you're in, you can better speak into making those changes and understand a foundation of, okay, these are the different concepts and areas that I can learn and grow more in, because there's not really the best roadmap out there to learn this stuff from my experience. So I want to continue to unpack what even is this accessibility stuff, all with the perspective of using your lived experience. And so, one other thing about accessibility, or two other things, is that a lot of people can make accessibility about compliance, which we'll talk more about later, and just follow these standards and you're good to go. But I don't want people to just follow standards. I want companies to create products and websites and services that are accessible so that I can have an awesome user experience, not just a compliant website so that people can avoid any legal trouble. So we'll talk more about that later, but accessibility is a very human issue. Also, there's many different roles in accessibility, and I don't want anyone to think that, oh, I just have to become a web developer if I want to work in accessibility. Whatever job you have, wherever you're at in education, wherever you're involved in your community, you can be a part of making things more accessible. And just an inside scoop, I've done a lot of technical accessibility testing and training, and I don't have a background in computer science. I've never done a coding boot camp, anything like that, but we'll talk more about that later. But just wanted to address that when we talk about accessibility. So the first area I wanted to discuss a bit that a lot of us hear about is accessibility testing. This is basically where we understand that a lot of websites and products and services out there are not really designed very accessibly, if I can use that word. And so if it's not accessible and we want to make things better, we're going to have to go in, check out those websites, software, app, whatever it is, test it out, see where it has problems, and then you go in and you can figure out what they are, explain them to people that are going to solve it, improve it, and then you do it again until you create something that is accessible for all people and users to use. And when you're first looking at or thinking of accessibility testing, a lot of people think about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And these can be very helpful, but also can just confuse people a lot more. A lot of different accessibility testing rules will rely on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or I'll refer to as WCAG, to say, okay, we see all these rules. For example, the text on a website has to have this level of color contrast. Okay, does the website have this level of color contrast? Yes or no? Okay, no, it doesn't. It doesn't meet that standard. You can use these standards as a reference point. They're going to have a lot of limitations, and I would recommend exploring and understanding them, but they're going to fall short at times because they apply mostly to the internet and websites. If you could have a website that has full WCAG compliance, but it's not a good user experience for a screen reader user or a magnification user like many of us may be. And so that's where having the lived experience is very valuable, because someone could do some testing and be like, oh, I know WCAG, but they don't use existing technology and they aren't able to understand, okay, what actually makes a good experience. Because I could provide a lot of different examples. We could talk more about them later, but there's a lot of different areas that can be explored of making sure that things are accessible and but they're within the WCAG, but unfortunately they won't make the most accessible and usable website. First, real quick question. I just got a notice that we will have a bit of a time limit. Did anybody else get that notification?
Like, I did not get that notification.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. It says time remaining 8 minutes and 45 seconds.
Okay, I'm not sure why it is limiting with a free version here. Yeah, okay. We may just have 8 minutes left. I'm sorry if the Zoom link may have gotten cut short there. What we can do is I can try to condense things a little bit. I can try to also create a bit of extended presentation to share more after. Yeah, I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. If we could try to create another link, but I don't want to necessarily make others jump into another meeting. Stand by. I could always email after everyone who registered to get another link to join another webinar as well. But I'm just going to continue and keep rolling with it. Thank you all for bearing with us. So to cover the other areas of accessibility testing, there is also going to be mobile accessibility testing and document accessibility testing. And when testing any different type of technology, it's always using the assistive technology you use, a screen reader or a magnification tool, and seeing where does this work well and where doesn't this work well, and making sure that you document and report these issues, which we can talk about later. And also, when you test with a screen reader, that's going to really help a lot of different users and is normally the place that has the most blockers. Now, the blind users are not necessarily the most important when it comes to accessibility. I don't want us to forget the other types of disabilities that this affects, but there's normally the most barriers, and there's also overlap with other types of users when doing screen reader testing or magnification testing. So one of the biggest things in accessibility is communication. And when finding issues that you experience on a website or any product, it's making sure you write them down and communicate a variety of different things, such as where the issue is, how severe the issue is. Do you know if this relates to a WCAG guideline? And communicating how can they improve the problem that you found. The biggest thing that you need to know is that you don't have to know how to code and how to give people the technical solution. You just need to be able to share examples and make things simple, and the whoever's making the solution, they'll be able to fix it. They have the technical insights. And you also want to just get comfortable knowing how to communicate your lived experience, and you don't have to be an expert at everything. The best expertise is you knowing your assistive technology and how you can communicate things to others to help improve things. So how can you use your lived experience? This is where accessibility can fall short and usability is very important. Where it's one thing now, something be accessible. Yeah, it does work, but how usable is it? And having a great user experience. You also can better explain why are these changes important. Some people could be like, why do I need to make the label for this button a little more specific? Well, it's like, well, then I can actually understand the difference between all these buttons on the page. You can also explain better how assistive technology works and can be used. And your lived experience is your greatest asset and puts you at a competitive edge over people who could be experts at computer science and know and not know that important lived experience part. So a little bit about working in accessibility. There are many different types of roles. A lot of people can just want to be an accessibility tester, but you can also pursue different paths. If you work in marketing and are creating content, you can be conscious of the marketing content that you're creating, that you put out. How accessible is it? If you are a recruiter, you can be mindful of how accessible is your hiring process, whatever it may be. And a lot of the things we talk about are great places to keep learning more and gaining more skills. But being a good communicator is very important, and knowing your assistive technology is super important to know. And a bit more about learning more, again, growing as a communicator, learning your assistive technology better and better. If you can know some basics of web development that connects to a lot of different areas, it can be super helpful. And just researching more on these different topics, because it can be a lot of different things to learn. So I briefly wanted to just share, if you wanted to learn more about this, how Clusiv can help, because a lot of these things can be confusing and complicated, and we want to share a bit how Clusiv can help. And we are an e-learning platform built for the blind community to learn technology, occupational, and career skills training. And so with that said, our goal is to help remove barriers to employment. And if you want to work in accessibility or continue to grow in your employment goals, you can learn more about accessibility and skills to have by taking our courses to improve your assistive technology skills and know how to apply, for example, your screen reader to software used in the modern workforce. We have courses to help you teach you the basics of web development, and one of our latest courses on how to become an accessibility analyst, and you can dive deeper in learning all that I shared about today. So if you're interested in these areas, we want to be a solution to help you reach your goals. If you want to learn more about Clusiv training and enrolling in any of our courses, we do work with state vocational rehab agencies to provide our courses at no cost to the end user. And that's kind of currently how we deliver our training. If you have questions, and want to learn more, I'll send out an email after this that you can reply to, and we'll talk with you directly to get you more information about enrolling. Or you can directly email enroll@clusiv.io. That's CLUSIV.io. Or you can go to our website at clusiv.io, CLUSIV.io, and go to our students page, fill out a form, and get more information. Just want to make sure we provide a variety of ways to connect you with more information. With any time remaining, do we have any questions?